this is Brian Reich from Reich Consulting, back with part 2 of my video series about using the internet safely. I called this segment, There's No Such Thing as a Free Lunch. Now, in my opinion, there's two problems with trying to use the internet safely these days. One is a problem of knowledge, and the other is a problem of expectations and entitlement. Now, this problem of knowledge that I'm talking about stems from the fact that the internet is a lot like the deist view of the universe, in my opinion anyway. Basically, the deist believes that God created the universe, he filled it with stuff, and then he ditched it. That's a lot like the way the internet works, in my opinion. The internet became a fundamental part of our daily lives, but no one ever really told us how to use it. And now we're left with an internet that has the absolute best and the absolute worst of what we as a species have to offer. You can learn literally anything you want on the internet, but at the same time, there's no better place to get scammed than the internet. So what I recommend to people is that you navigate the internet like an unfamiliar city. Be cautious, know what trouble looks like, understand where it might lurk, and how to avoid it. And that's kind of the whole point of this video series. Now, this problem of expectations and entitlement that I mentioned, that's a little bit more difficult to tackle. It stems from the fact that we expect everything on the internet to be free, and that goes doubly for those of us that grew up with Napster. The fact of the matter is, even on the internet, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Basically, somewhere, someone is going to pay for just about everything that happens on the internet. Now, one notable exception to that is something called open source software, which we'll talk about in a little while. But the problem with that is that it can be difficult to identify what's truly open source and what's just masquerading as open source. Something to keep in mind is that if it's free but it's not open source, chances are someone's trying to profit off of it. So, how are folks going to try and make money from free services on the internet? Let's try and dig into that a little bit deeper. One way is by offering a donation-based service. Now, that's exactly what it sounds like. It's a service that doesn't charge a fee for use. They work based on the goodwill of their users, and they hope that their users will donate an amount that they're comfortable with. It works just like National Public Radio does in the real world. They even hold fund drives from time to time. Two very good examples are Wikipedia and Khan Academy. I'm sure most of you have used at least one of those. Now, in my experience, donation-based services are usually pretty safe. Now, next is something called a crowdfunded service. Now, this is a pretty recent development on the internet. You might see it, you might not, but I wanted you to be aware of it and be able to recognize it when you see it. Basically, crowdfunded services solicit contributions from their users using funding sites such as GoFundMe.com or Kickstarter. People basically vote with their dollars for products that they want to see happen. Now, crowdfunding is usually used to fund startups. It's not generally used to fund products and services that already exist, but that might change in the future, so you should know what this looks like when you see it. Next on the list is free software with a premium version. Now, this is what we used to call shareware back in the day, if you're familiar with that term. The general idea is that a company will offer a free version of their software at no charge. You can use that free version and it'll whet your appetite and make you want to buy the premium version to get more features later on. One modern example of that is a program called SketchUp. It used to be owned by Google. I believe it's now owned by a company named Trimble. If you use SketchUp to make drawings and you want to export those to a more robust application like AutoCAD, I think you need to buy the premium version to do that. In my experience, this type of software is usually pretty safe, and that's because they want you to buy something after you're done using the free version. They really don't have anything to gain by scamming you. Next is something called pay with a share. Basically, the idea is that you can either pay real money for a product, or you can help the developer to market it to people who will. Now, this scheme is very popular for web design software. It's not so popular with general purpose software. But yeah, the idea is that instead of paying for the program, you'll share a link to the program on Facebook or Twitter with your friends. Generally, it's pretty safe, but it can be annoying to folks that really don't have any interest in this software. Next are free trial subscriptions, which sound exactly like what they are. A company will offer their full service free for a limited time, and when the trial expires, you're either forced to pay for it or you're automatically billed if you put a credit card in ahead of time. One example would be Spotify Premium, which is a music service that I actually happen to buy the premium version of. Spotify will offer a trial of their full service, and after a month, then you got to pay. But trust me, it's worth it. Once again, I think trial subscriptions are usually pretty safe because at the end of the trial, they want you to buck up. Next are ad-supported services, which are basically software services that are free of charge that make money by charging companies for ads that display to you while you're using the service. Two very notable examples are literally everything that Google makes, including their search engine and including Gmail, as well as my website and my videos. Now, I love to share my knowledge, I love to podcast, I love to record videos, but at the end of the day, I've got a house to remodel, so I got to make some cash. Don't fault me for that. Now, your safety is not always guaranteed with ad-supported services. It really depends on the ad network that the service uses. For example, Google's pretty safe. Google vets all their ads, and generally they're very safe. It's very, very rare that anything too terrible sneaks through. On the other hand, if you frequent websites such as the Pirate Bay or Mininova, generally software sharing sites or personal sites, stuff like that, they don't vet their ads nearly as well as Google does. And every once in a while, something will sneak through where you'll view the ad on your computer, which you have no control over if you're on that website, and that ad will sneak some sort of malware or adware onto your computer. They can be dangerous. You've got to keep an eye out for that sort of thing. Next is the classic bait and switch. Basically, it's something that's kind of hard to foresee ahead of time. A product will be offered no strings attached until the day that it's not. The company will wait until their service or their software is hugely popular, and then they'll pull out the rug out from under their user base by charging for it. A very recent example of that is LogMeIn, which is a remote access application that IT workers like me use constantly. It became almost indispensable to do our jobs. And all of a sudden, just a couple of weeks ago, LogMeIn decided to charge for what used to be their free service. And it was a big inconvenience. I can't say that this bait and switch tactic is necessarily dangerous, but it is incredibly annoying, and it made me want to switch to another product, not buy their premium product. Next is something I call software bundling. Basically, software bundling is when the developer of one program gets paid money to include someone else's program alongside theirs. Most legitimate software will at least give you an option of opting out of the bundled software when you install it, but that's not always the case. Now, two examples of software bundling are Java and uTorrent. Java is installed on just about every computer on the planet, and you've probably seen that little flashing thing down at the bottom of your screen that wants you to update Java. When you do that, you're also going to be given the option of installing the bundled toolbars that come along with it. And you can opt out of that. The same goes for uTorrent, which is a popular file sharing service. Basically, when you install uTorrent, once again, they're paid money to bundle these toolbars along with their application, but you can opt out of it if you're careful during the install. Now, once again, your safety isn't always guaranteed with software bundling. They might bundle something dangerous. That's why it's important to read the installation instructions. Don't just click through and hit next, install when you're installing software. Actually look at those directions as you're going through and opt out of the stuff that you don't want. Next on the list is adware. Adware is really similar to ad-supported software, but the important difference is that adware usually infects your system in some way. And the reason it does this is so it can display ads to you all the time, not just while you're using that software that you installed. Sometimes adware can compromise your privacy. It might watch what you're doing on the internet and report your browsing preferences to marketing agencies. And that's why I think it's very unsafe. If it can see what you're doing on your computer and report that to other people, that ain't cool. Now, along a similar vein is information sharing and data theft. A service might offer a free download of something like a wallpaper or a ringtone or a cell phone game, something very simple like that. And in exchange, they'll ask for some personal information, like your name or your phone number or your email address. And what's going to happen is they're going to share that information with third parties, and you might start getting strange emails. You're going to get spammed. You might get unsolicited phone calls. I've actually seen it go so far as people being charged automatically on their cell phone bill for apps and ringtones and stuff that they didn't even remember signing up for. And It might be a few months down the road when they realize they have this recurring charge on their cell phone bill. So you got to look out for this stuff. Next is malware, which has become an increasingly popular term in the last couple of years. Malware often comes as a software bundle, but not always. Sometimes it sneaks onto your computer on its own. But malware is a type of software that slows down or harms your computer. It can be similar to adware in that it might display ads. It can change your default search provider and homepage in your web browser and not let you change them back. It might spy on and report your internet usage to marketing companies, or it might do something as nefarious as making your computer part of a botnet and using it to attack some other server on the internet. Malware is very unsafe, and you need to be on the lookout for it. Last and probably not least is something called ransomware. What ransomware is software that harms your computer until you pay money to get rid of it. One notable example are the very popular fake antiviruses that have been making their rounds around the internet the last couple of years. These programs will report to you that you have viruses that you don't actually have, and they'll lock you out of your computer until you pay to remove them. Another very recent example is something called CryptoLocker. CryptoLocker is a ransomware that will encrypt all the files on your computer, and then you'll have to pay a hacker to unlock them. There have been not just individuals but businesses brought down by this ransomware. It's something that's very critical for you to avoid. It's very unsafe. Now, the one giant exception to my rule about there being no such thing as a free lunch on the internet is open source software. Open source software is software in which the author has chosen to share the source code for their program with other people. Now, open source authors often work on non-monetary incentives. They might just write the software for the challenge, or they might have a project-specific passion. For example, maybe they're really into audio editing, or maybe they work in the medical or the healthcare field. They might write software to do something related to their job and then share it with their peers for free. Now, that's not to say that companies won't use open source to make money. It happens all the time. Some companies offer premium paid support for free open source software, or they might offer a paid add-on to a free open source application. Now, the one critical thing to remember about open source is that open source is usually free, but it doesn't work the other way around. Free isn't always open source. Now, if there's one thing that you should take away from this video, it's that very few things on the internet are actually free. If something is explicit about how it plans to make money, it might be safe. On the other hand, if it's completely free and it's not explicitly open source, it's probably not safe, or at the very least, you should question it before you download it. Coming up in the next few videos, we're going to talk about how to identify these money-making schemes on the internet. I'm going to show you a couple concrete examples of each one of these and show you what they look like and how you might avoid the pitfalls that come with them. We're going to talk about how to identify sites that are safe and software that's safe. And then we're going to talk about how to protect your PC using free software, including your Windows firewall, free antivirus, free malware protection, and free imaging software. Well, that's all I've got for today. Have a great weekend, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.